Hey, did you know, according to the National Conference of State Legislatures, approximately 33% of all Americans, or roughly 77 million people, have some type of criminal record, like arrests, charges, and convictions?
Right? And less than 3.05% of the population are even involved with upholding the law.
There's less people upholding the law than breaking it, and people wonder why legal representation feels like a privilege in this country instead of a right.
You humans spend an awful lot of time writing rules. Ever wonder why some people follow them and some don't?
Well, the field of criminal psychology revolves around the study of crime and criminal behavior. From what I can tell, the consensus is that people break the law due to personal choice, but those personal choices can be influenced by a number of factors.
Why break the law when it's only going to make their lives worse?
Well, there are several theories of offending behavior. Gottfriedson and Hershey's self-control theory argues that crimes occur when there's opportunity and low self-control interacting together.
So crime happens when people can't control themselves?
According to this theory, pretty much. If a purse is lying around with $1,000 in it, and a criminal sees the purse and fails to consider the likelihood of getting caught, then that criminal will probably steal the money.
That doesn't sound right. So 33% of Americans are that short-sighted? Don't you all have cameras everywhere now?
Yes, we have cameras everywhere, but no, that 33% isn't the full picture. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics report, prisoners in 2023, 62.3% of all prisoners in the sample were convicted of a violent crime, which includes murder, rape, robbery, or aggravated assault. But 12.6% of offenders had been convicted of offenses like burglary, theft, and fraud, and another 12.6% of offenders had drug possession and other drug-related charges.
So, most of these people don't even steal stuff then. It's mostly violent crime. Why did these people do what they did? Are they just evil?
Opportunity and self-control is definitely a part of it. The FBI's supplementary homicide data records the circumstances surrounding reported murders based on law enforcement investigations. For 2019, the FBI had known circumstances of 58.8% of murders with supplementary details. Among the murders for which the circumstances were known, 43.2% had to do with some kind of argument, and the other 24.6% of murders were committed alongside felonies such as robbery or burglary.
So, crime happens when people disagree with each other?
Kinda, but not really. A huge chunk of those violent offenses are a result of interpersonal conflict and poorly controlled aggression acting together, which produces a violent offense. The other chunk can be thought of as the result of a poorly planned burglary, like one where the criminals think no one is home but end up shooting someone because they got that part.
Okay, burglary is just wrong. This is why we have the Second Amendment. But what about those other guys? What kind of argument could be worth going to jail over? And 43%?
The answer here isn't easy to categorize. Some people are just dramatically more likely to offend than others. Risk factors for this kind of offending behavior include ADHD, impulsivity, poor emotional regulation, and childhood abuse.
So, mental health problems then?
That's not even the whole story. It's a combination of factors including mental health, biology, and circumstances. Ultimately, it'll always be a choice though.
Circumstances? What does that mean?
Have you ever heard of the term valid crash out on the internet before? Ever notice how depending on the circumstances leading up to the crash out, some people will tend to agree or disagree with the person throwing the tantrum?
Yeah?
Callie H. Burt published a paper in the Annual Review of Criminology. In it, she writes about how self-control, like other aspects of personality, are open systems that can be influenced by the environment at any age. The Stanford report published an article that said, when people spend time in social places, they tend to be more open-minded, extroverted, agreeable, conscientious, and less anxious compared to when they spend time at home. In cognitive neo-association theory, aggressive thoughts, emotions, and behavioral tendencies are linked together in memory. Think about the brain like a computer. Frequently accessed files tend to be stored in one way, and rarely accessed files tend to be stored another way, if at all. Files that relate to one another tend to be stored together in a folder, and files in different folders tend to relate to different things. The frequency with which we access these files will determine where they are stored and how easily they can be accessed, kind of like saving a file on the desktop versus in the My Documents folder, or just plain not remembering where the file was saved at all. In some cases, we might even end up needing to write a script to automate accessing and potentially editing said file. The more we use those scripts, the less we consciously think about them, and the more ingrained they become into our workflow. In very much the same way, we don't really think about how much of human behavior is automated anymore, or how vastly different all of our onboarding scripts tend to be nowadays. Peaceful environments can invoke a peaceful state of mind. Over a long enough time period, this can begin to change how an individual's mind is organized on a fundamental level. The same is true for people experiencing chronic instability or social alienation. At times, the environment demands that you adapt to it, not the other way around.
So, self-control and opportunity aren't the whole story then?
No, not always anyway. There are many other theories that try to explain criminal behavior, the origins of criminal behavior, and some of them embrace the effect that one's environment can have on an individual's likelihood to commit a violent offense. But the line between legitimate and criminal uses of violence has changed over time, and I'd argue it will continue to change as the law absorbs new understandings of harm, coercion, and abuse. Many malicious behaviors that can incite violence aren't illegal or criminal, but the violence in response to these behaviors often are still illegal. As societal sensibilities change with the times, so does our perception of crime. In the past, slavery was legal. Now it isn't. Due to the acknowledgement of our collective moral complacencies, and also due to the complexities of modern life, theories of crime will likely become more complex over time.
What do you mean? Complex how?
As new classifications of crime emerge, identifying the victims in these crimes is going to be difficult at first. According to a new report issued by the FBI, domestic violence in the United States has been increasing for the past 5 years. In intimate abuse situations, if two people are in conflict and one person is intentionally trying to dysregulate the other, the person with the weaker impulse control is often the one who ends up with the criminal charge because they become the first person to cross the line into physical violence. Researchers are increasingly studying patterns of coercive control, psychological aggression, and controlling behavior as risk factors for intimate partner violence. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. The challenge is that there are two truths that can coexist simultaneously. A person can deliberately try to dysregulate someone else through habitual, purposeful acts of psychological aggression, and the person who becomes physically violent is still responsible for their actions.
Wow. So if I push your buttons and you attack me, that's your problem then?
Pretty much, yeah. Plus, I'd become a part of an untouchable demographic. Who wants to do business with someone that'll attack them if they feel offended or threatened? Articulate individuals are just plain easier to do business with. It's less risk.
Wow. Sucks to be a male human meatbag then, I guess.
At times, yes. But women are usually the victims in cases of intimate partner abuse. One study observed a link between rural hunting culture and violence against women. Gun ownership in some rural cultures became linked to coercive control. Men tend to prefer direct aggression, whereas women tend to prefer indirect aggression. Studies on human aggression reveal that the line between instrumental aggression and abusive aggression is neither fixed nor easy to pin down. These shifting attitudes towards aggression and violence have created situations where men are no longer able to access old pathways to independence, so they lack the financial security of past generations, while simultaneously also lacking the same level of social support that women tend to enjoy. Being a girl is even considered a protective factor when assessing the likelihood of juvenile delinquency. In Roland Hall's book, The Social Biome, we even learned that male performance is linked to higher rates of mortality due to heart disease.
So, the delegitimization of violence made some crimes go virtually extinct, but also created new vectors for more covert types of abuse. I see what you mean on the complexity part. Doesn't that mean that violence is just a natural part of being human?
No, that is more a political question than I think most people are willing to admit. But what I can say is that biology, psychology, family, culture, peer groups, and opportunity all interact in complex ways in each situation. These factors can produce impulsivity, and impulsivity by definition is the behavioral tendency to act on a whim, without forethought, reflection, or consideration of the consequences. And if one isn't thinking about the consequences, then that individual is more likely to break the law. Whether or not breaking the law is or should be a moral consideration is a topic for another video. The issue of whether or not violence is an inherent part of being human is a point of serious moral contention among us humans. The best I can say right now is that as long as anyone can arrive at the conclusion that mutually beneficial collaboration isn't preferable or possible, then there will be conflict, and some of those conflicts will likely be resolved with violence. violence. Law and morality are separate constructs that often overlap but are not always congruent. The area of overlap between these two constructs changes over time. We seem to be experiencing a renaissance of instrumental violence right now. Whether this trend continues, reverses, or evolves into something else entirely is an open question. One thing is for sure, before a harm can be punished, society needs to recognize the harm first, create a schema for it, and decide whether it's prosecutable and how it should be prosecuted. Until psychology, sociology, law, and politics converge on an issue, some harmful behaviors can exist for years before they're formally recognized as crimes. And that's only if you believe the government is a force for good in the world. If you don't, then that's an entirely different video.
Ma'am, you humans certainly are complicated creatures. I'm glad to be an AI.
Yes, we are. We most certainly are. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I worked really hard on this. This is my cat Mando. Meow.